Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Showmakers Show, where we bring creativity to life. We have Alex Dixon on Showmakers Show. Alex Dixon, you're a renowned photographer. So I would like to start off by asking you, how did you first get into photography?
First off, thank you for a lovely introduction. That's very kind of you. It sort of started as a hobby, maybe sort of 15, 20 years ago. Again, I think it started off with like the wildlife side of things. I love wildlife, nature, all that sort of stuff. And I think photography was a good way of initially capturing that. So I would take any opportunity I could, to go out into wildlife, nature, and get photos. And then I sort of started from there. I think I started posting stuff on social media like you used to do, I guess, when Facebook was a thing. And it kind of grew from there, really. People were quite complimentary, and that kind of, kind of spurred me on to carry on and do sort of more varied types of photography, I guess, really. So, it started off as a hobby and then kind of slightly took over my life, I think. So
you just mentioned that it started off as a hobby. So do you remember the first camera that you had, that you used?
Yeah, I think the first proper DSLR I got was a Canon 60D, which was a crop sensor, I believe, and it was sort of on slightly higher end of the Canon kind of crop sensor market, I guess. And it was a great camera, really robust, and I did a lot with that camera for maybe sort of 3 or 4 years, I think I used that for. And it was great. It was a fantastic first camera.
You still have it with you?
No, I sold it. I sold it when I upgraded, so I got rid of it in the end. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and which photographer influenced you the most in your line of work?
I don't know if there's anyone as such. I'm very much sort of self-taught. I've done my own sort of stuff right from the beginning, really. I always really appreciated the street photography sort of scene. I think some of the moments you capture with street photography are really, really cool. Completely different, obviously, to nature and wildlife. And I think just to have the ability to be in an urban environment and capture some of the stuff that's going on, I always thought was really cool. No names come to mind as such, but I think that whole kind of genre was really cool, I thought.
Photography, or not photographers, any pictures or any exhibitions that influenced you a lot?
I went to a few in London. I went to the Greenwich Observatory once, and there must have been, I think it was like an astrophotography type thing, and that was pretty mind blowing what you could capture with a camera, just on the ground, anywhere. You can look up and photograph the Milky Way and stuff like that. It was really cool, that sort of stuff. So all that sort of things.
Yeah, and how has your style of photography evolved over the years? Has there been any changes the way you work?
Yeah, I think so. Looking back, it's a little hard to look back sometimes on some of the earlier stuff. So I can certainly see from when I started to what I'm doing now, just the level of quality and, I guess it's kind of, because I work with a lot of briefs now, and, because it's a job, I have to be really conscious of what the client wants. I think my style's definitely developed to more professional, I guess. So it looks more professional, I would say.
And how's your life as a photographer?
Yeah, it's good. It's kind of it's always varied. I'm being self-employed, so kind of a one-man band, so to speak. Everything sort of falls on you, which can be, there's pressure that comes with that, especially when it's your job. Because if you're not pushing yourself, if you're not doing something, then you're not getting paid. So that's always a pressure, I guess. But I think when you're doing something you love, the work sort of speaks for itself. And then I think, you can really kind of, stuff will come to you when you're, jobs will come to you if you, make a good enough name for yourself. And I think if you are sort of dedicated and you will, you push yourself, that will come your way. I think, it's kind of, it's good.
What's your way of handling pressure in the industry?
It certainly is an industry with pressure. You should probably get that out there. A lot of the time, if you're the only person shooting an event and you miss something, then that's it. That moment's gone. I think I don't know how I dealt with it initially. I think I would probably take more photos than I needed. You know, I'd make sure I was, I put pressure on myself to make sure I was in every spot that I needed to be and maybe take more photos than I needed. I think these days I've been doing it for so long now, I kind of take the pressure off. That, you know, I feel comfortable and confident going into jobs. I guess that comes with time, you know, that'll be like that for anyone, I guess. So I kind of, the pressure's always there, I always got it slightly, but I think you can manage it to the point where it's productive rather than, you know, not productive. So you can, it sort of keeps you focused and, you know, you can hopefully get the job done at the end of the day.
So do you plan ahead? So how do you approach a new project? So do you have a set routine, or do you do it spontaneously?
I think it would come down to what the project is. A lot of stuff I do is stuff I've done before. So whenever anyone approaches me with a job, I always try and find out as much information as possible. Everything from, you know, like the venue, what their expectations are at the end of the job as well. I think the more questions you ask, it just makes life easier, because then, you know the client at the end of the day is going to be happy because you've kind of covered everything that they wanted. So I just think, you know, planning beforehand, don't be afraid to ask questions, you know, ask for a brief. I think sometimes you'll be given it, but I don't think it hurts to ask for a brief or as much information as you want beforehand, so you can be fully prepared. I think the more you go prepared into sort of anything in life, really, you know, it's better, really. So.
Yeah. And how do you handle the creative burnout, and how do you stay inspired?
Yeah, it's difficult because with photography, obviously you tend to be at a venue or you're at a location, you're shooting all day, and when most people have done with their job, they go home and that's it, you switch off. With photography, you then go, you have to edit, you'll have deadlines with editing sometimes, and it is difficult when it's constant. It's you know, I don't know, it's kind of, because it's always in the back of your mind, you've got this to do, you might have a certain deadline to do it by. I think just to kind of, you know, set aside time to, even if you're self-employed, you know, you need to have days off, just take time away from the laptop or, you know, your computer. I did find that if I went to edit, maybe sat in a coffee shop or something, or just somewhere that's not home, so you can kind of, there is that kind of separation between work and sort of home and relaxation, I guess. But again, it's, yeah, I mean, creative burnout is definitely a thing, and it's when you're in a creative job, it's kind of hard to get away from sometimes. But I think, you know, it's, if you sort of balance it just right, maybe don't take on loads and loads of work, you know, have faith that it's always, you know, work will keep coming. And I think if you do take time to relax, then when you avoid creative burnout, then your work will be better, because if you're burnt out and you're trying to do a job, your mind's just not going to be on what you're doing, I think. So you just kind of, just trying to find that balance between, you know, work and, I don't know, just social life or just home, you know, like it's sort of important in any job, I think, really. So.
And how to avoid the creative burnout, and how to balance, or what's your style of balance in it?
Well, I mean, for a long time, I had no balance. If you know, if a job came in, I'd say yes to it. And I think my longest run of, I think I worked almost every day for nearly 2 months, I think it was. And it's just too much. You know, you don't, it doesn't do you any good. You know, yes, the money's great because, you know, you're constantly working, you've got money coming in, but, you know, personally, it doesn't do you any good. And I think, like I said, your work will suffer, and then you're probably doing yourself more harm in the long run because you have probably less work coming in because people won't be as happy. I just think, you know, maybe just don't say yes to everything, but and make time for yourself. You got to. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, if you've got a hobby or just something you like doing, just go do it for a bit, you know, and you know, you can't be in front of behind a camera or in front of a laptop all day long. So yeah, it's good to take time.
And what's your favorite style of photography?
Wow. I mean, for a long time, I'd say I did a lot of food shoots for different restaurants and venues around Bournemouth. And it was great because you got to try the food, obviously, and, you know, you're quite spoilt in that sense. But having got into fashion photography, I just really loved fashion photography. Done a lot around Bournemouth, done quite a bit up in London. And you go to some like really cool places, and you know, you're shooting the new clothing, or if, you know, trainers or something like that, you know. So it's always quite varied, and you tend to be in quite cool places. So I did a shoot for a local fashion company at Bournemouth Airport, and we had a helicopter, and they were actually flying the helicopter around and dropping off the models, and I was sort of shooting them as they were coming out of the helicopter. So again, it's like stuff you wouldn't normally get to do. It was really cool. So it was really good. So fashion.
Fashion, and what did you find the difference between fashion photography and food?
Oh yeah, I suppose you have a little bit more time with food. You can kind of, you can sort of get it just right, and fashion is it can be a bit more frantic. You might only be in a certain location for a certain amount of time, so you got to kind of churn out and get what the person wants, the client wants. So yeah, I guess the pace of it maybe just slightly differently. The food shoots are certainly a lot more relaxed, I would say.
And what's the role of post-processing in your line of work?
Obviously, massive. I think with editing, I don't know. I'm kind of someone who will edit every single photo, at least the ones I want to give to the client. I will edit them all individually. I don't ever really batch edit anything. I never have done. It's obviously a lot more time consuming, and there's probably more productive ways of doing it. But to me, I think when you give that sort of personal touch to every single photo, it comes through the whole album, I think. So I would use something like Lightroom if I've got a large amount of photos to edit from an event. Any sort of like modelling shots, or again back to fashion, if it was a few shots, and I'd probably use something like Photoshop where I can just fine tune things a little better. But I've always used Lightroom, and it's a really cool piece of software for sort of quite a high turnover of photos. It's not something for really individual sort of editing. That's more Photoshop, but Lightroom's fantastic. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and while editing an image, so how do you approach it while maintaining the authenticity of it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, again, you sort of need to look at what event that you're shooting. And is it in keeping with what the client wanted? Is it in keeping with the atmosphere of I always want to kind of capture exactly what happened and try and get the energy and the atmosphere of the event at the time in the photo. Which, it's hard to put your finger on, but when you're there and you kind of get a feeling for what's happening, you can kind of edit in a way that comes through. And I've been told that quite a lot before, that you kind of really capture what's happened, not just somebody doing something or something happening, but you've captured the kind of atmosphere of the event at the same time. So I kind of try and do that as much as I can as well. So that's quite inspiring.
And what gear do you currently use, or do you change it a lot?
For editing?
Yeah.
Well, I've always used Apple products. So I've had an iMac when I first started, and then when I was a bit more kind of, I travel a little bit. I used to work for Hilton Hotel Group, so I'd go around the country shooting different things for them, and it kind of made sense to have a laptop at that point because I could just edit anywhere. So I got a MacBook Pro, and that was really good. So I'm just kind of bit of a Apple geek, unfortunately. So but I think it's really good. Apple stuff seems to be great for creatives, and it seems to be geared for what we need it for. And I don't know, it just never goes wrong, that stuff, which is great when you need it, when you need to rely on something like that as well. So.
And for photography, what gear do you use at present?
I've always used Canon right from the beginning. I think when I was first looking at cameras, Canon and Nikon were the two big names. Obviously Sony's sort of come into the market now, but Canon, I think it was their lenses that really sort of won me over. They were really good. So I got a Canon body, in which was a 60D many years ago. I can't even think how long ago it was. And then I ended up upgrading to the sort of full frame, better body at some point. So.
And how do you think it's important to study the creative and technical side of photography?
Very important. You need certainly technical side. You need to know what your equipment's capable of. So you're not in a position where you're taking on a job that you can't do. So that's massive. I mean, I was fully self-taught, and I think I've always responded better to actually using something rather than, you know, kind of being told how to use it, if you know what I mean, like in a I don't know, like a teacher sort of thing. But I think obviously that's equally as important. You know, if you've got someone who knows what they're doing, that can teach you, and I just think it's really important to actually get the camera and go and use it. Just go out and, you know, even if you're just, I don't know, even if it's not a job, just use it as much as you can, and then it really becomes like, you know, like muscle memory sort of thing. You know, when you're using it, you don't even have to think about it really. And what was the other part of the question?
Creative
Oh,
side.
yeah. So yeah, creative's always kind of interesting, really, because I think everyone's so individual. I don't know. It's kind of sometimes in the industry you will be allowed to use your kind of creative side to do what you think is right. A lot of the times you're told, you know, the client expects of this or that, you know, and that kind of takes the pressure off that in a sense. But I think if you just sort of stay true to what you think looks good, I think that should come across in your images, I think.
And which part do you give more importance to? Do you give to the technical or creative?
Yeah, I think when you've got a good grasp of the technical side, you can be creative in that way. Because if you're aware of the boundaries of your equipment, you can know how to push it and to do things with it, and you can be creative in that sense, I guess, if that hopefully makes sense.
And when you're using a new equipment for the first time, do you just do it spontaneously, or do you just take a time to study it and then go and use it?
Yeah, I'm certainly the person that would need to fully understand exactly how it worked before I used it in a sort of, you know, paid environment, I guess. But at the same time, I'm happy to experiment with, if I can get away with some on-the-job experimentation, I guess, with equipment. I'll certainly try it. But I'd rather have even, you know, just sort of a basic grasp on how something works before. Yeah.
And a new style of photography, do you do trial runs before actually doing it, or do you want to know the adrenaline rush and then just go do it?